my thumb, but it's quite small. It's like 6 by 4. That was to get us the maximum of light that we could. We found that necessary to package all the light we possibly could from the projector, so the VCR, the video camera, would get the maximum out of the dark spots. And that's David's wife, Doreen, soon after they were married, and this is taken on the end of Waterloo Station. This is, of course, not too long. Look at that beautiful Southern Railway electric train there. There's the post office tower, which is quite new, and this is a Southern Railway steam locomotive with the smoke deflectors. I can't tell you what class it is, but my guess would be it's a Merchant Navy with the air smoothing removed, Pacific. There's a Southern electric train going to Waterloo, the terminus. There's David and Doreen, and that same tank locomotive in the background there. The train stopped in the platform, ready to take off, and the little shunter just moves 100 feet or so. At this time, when steam was being withdrawn finally, and I suppose this is about 66 now, there was a great deal of interest in the steam locomotives that remained, and you'll notice there's some guys hanging around just following this thing, and they're speaking to the engine driver, who's explaining about it. You didn't really see too much of that before. Oh, I guess that's not true. There were always engine spotters that I remember, but not perhaps to quite that depth. You know, here's one of those Pacifics slowly fading out into out back behind Waterloo. And here we are in 15 Hamilton Road. I'm in the front room. Once again, if you remember, we opened the film at the wedding sequence at 15 Hamilton Road with Park. Some 4 or 5 very short blocks down to the right there on Hamilton Road, and that was the park. It's about 200 acres, and there was a battery of anti-aircraft guns there. They're manned by the Women's Royal Army Corps. Noisy as all get out. Imagine sleeping at night with anti-aircraft guns the size of naval cannon going off all night. There's my father coming out of the old BTH where he worked and I was an apprentice lad. And of course the building is entirely gone now, with the rearrangements that have been made with industry in that country, just as much as they've been made here in the States. Getting into Michael's car, pleased to have a lift instead of taking the train from Neasden to Dollis Hill, one very, very short stop. That's, of course, they're arriving now, and this is again at number 15 Hamilton. We still know the people at number 13 and at number 11. Mrs. Carbelow lives at number 11 now. Here we are under the ground in Piccadilly Circus Station, with an old, well, it's 1938 tube stock just arriving in the platform. This junction that you can see with both tunnels visible is about the only place that I know of where that occurs in the whole underground system. You just cannot see one tube from another except here. And also, at that time, the Piccadilly Circus Station was the only station that I knew that was completely lighted by fluorescence, so the lighting was fairly high key. And Kodak had just come out with a new 100 ASA film at that time, which doesn't sound very fast now, but it would just do the trick, as you can see. So this sequence is in black and white. And I guess I must live right. There a train just came in, going in the other direction into the other platform. There's a better view of the junction. you can see the signal lights hanging above it, and the train will show you how the wall is there. See that it's just disappearing into the other tunnel. This is quite a deep station, quite the whole Piccadilly line. Well, of course, these trains that you're watching on the Bakerloo line, but you can see there's two escalators, and I think the next one is longer than that one. So here comes a train, and you can see it's not a headlight, it's just a sort of marker light. They don't have headlights, they just rush blindly into the black, you know. You can see it roaring down the tunnel, making that characteristic roar noise, and blasts out, pushing the air in front of it. And the people get out, and I've always enjoyed the look on the face of this third passenger when he sees somebody photographing him. Of course, I guess they must have thought I was nuts, because it was hardly lucky they would have thought, I guess, for it to turn out. I don't know what that train is, it's so dark, but it's not London Transport. Now here's Phil in Derriton at 10 Mount Boone, Dartmouth. She's in the, I guess, the scullery. It's a little room, like a mud room, but with a sink in it for sort of like heavy-duty preparation like this. It's the next room to the kitchen, and it has the back door of the house in it. And she was really a dab hand at filleting fish. Here's Harold coming through the back door, topping up his paint jars. He'll remember this section. I guess I was wrong. He was coming from the kitchen. And now we're on the road to just past Blackpool, which we'll be seeing more, and we're on the road to Salcombe, Devonshire. And there's Salcombe Bay. It's very beautiful. I always remember that it's rather difficult to get down to the town. The road's very narrow, and it's very highly populated in the summer. A lot of boats on the bay. Quaint old town nestling away in the hills. Quite a few good pubs in it. Now, we're at the parking lot, and there's Phil. And we're having the inevitable picnic, cup of tea, really nice. Harold. Note the really skinny steering wheel. Through the Devonshire lanes, very narrow. You have to wait for somebody else to pass. It's worse these days. 30 years later, there's a lot more traffic. Cars are bigger, and wow, it's tough. This is Kingsbridge, where we stopped off for a while. Oh, and here we are back at Derriton again. This is the back door, and I was beginning to say that he would remember this. This is when you went over there to paint the house. So the garage is just on the left. There's Harold just came out at my behest, and Phil. Rather nice flowers they always had growing around. Another view of Dartmouth from the back garden. And then a view of the garden towards the back of the house, where Harold had recently built this solarium, or sun room, strictly for growing plants. Beautiful Jack Manai. And their pet blackbird, who was tame enough to come inside the back door and peck crumbs off that they put there for him on the back door mat. Off again. This time I believe this is called Dartmeet. We're on our way for a trip up onto the moors proper. This is one of the tors. I don't know what its name is, but this is Haytor, and this is this is right where Joe and I spent the rest of our honeymoon after we got back from Paris. We took a tent and slept near, camped near Haytor, and then once again we picnic in style, you can see, and we're watched by some very interested lookers-on. They're wild sheep, tame wild sheep, if you understand what I mean. There's the biscuit tin, which would keep the wind off the primus stove, and one of Harold's leftovers from the George and Dragon, his tray advertising beer. And packing up, ready to go. And last look at the scenery. And a fond farewell to our friends the sheep. They just have a quick tussle before they go. A couple of rams doing a traditional butt. Well, no, forget it. I'll butt off. Doing a spot of coughing there too. They seem to be good at coughing a lot. And so we say farewell. And of course the other wild creatures which are very visible are the wild, donkeys are they? I don't know. Ponies, that's it, wild ponies. Who again aren't that wild. I mean, they roam freely, but they come up and say hi for a handout. And the very characteristic stone wall, dry stone wall, just stones heaped on each other very neatly and very precisely, and they stand there for years. Of course, once again, this generation has taken a disproportionate toll on old things like that. Some of them have been knocked down a bit, but they do get put back together. Now here's Betty Denning, Joe's cousin on her father's side. And Joe is Betty Denning's, Joe and her brother Ken are Betty's only surviving relatives. As I told you earlier, she's had a stroke and her right hand's paralyzed, but she seems to talk pretty well. And that's Jack. And now we're going out in their own boat, the Red Robin, or the Robin, I think it was called. And we're going out to see if we can get some more turbot, which Jack was telling me the last time Joe and I spoke to him at his garage on top of the hill overlooking Dartmouth. Turbot have absolutely disappeared from Dogger Bank outside the estuary, where they were plentiful. We used to bring back a tub of fish, which included a lot of these massive turbot, which are like very large flounders. They've now been all fished out. I even caught a couple myself once. Here's friendly people coming back in, and the traditional bait exchange. It's almost like a sourdough operation. Beautiful sailing ship. Beautiful house. Jack at the wheel. Always got a laugh. Good sense of humor. And a closer view of the castle. And of course, they go out to sea almost regardless of the weather. I don't recall that we caught a great deal of fish. I think we just sort of huddled and enjoyed the day. But none of you guys have got queasy stomachs. It's pretty rocky. Anyway, so we got back up to London again and paid a visit to my father in his garden, and my mother, of course. And he's somewhere hiding in that jungle of roses. Yeah, here they are. Can I offer you a rose? That's a budgerigar cage in back there. He used to be very keen on budgie birds. Now, just doing a quick turnaround here. We're up in the Poconos, very briefly, camping. We went camping very shortly after we got back that summer, and we have a guest appearance with us. No, not Charles. That was sort of accidental, but Jan Epstein from over the road came with us on that occasion. There he is. And I haven't seen Jan in years, although I understand he still lives in the Atlantic City area. But I don't see him when he visits home. Mother pouring milk for Sarah with the ponytail. And see the fire ring there, which was always a great source of enjoyment. Now, taking a quick swing back to the United Kingdom. This is the estuary of the Exe, and then coming down to Dawlish Warren, with the old Red Queen that we always looked out for. I don't know if her head ever fell off yet. Possibly so, because we've been watching it for a long time. Until, like everybody else, we started driving instead. Here we're going along past Churston and Goodrington Sands halt. The beach with the many beach huts. People keep their belongings in, I suppose, and change in them anyway. And this is all taken from the train which goes across a viaduct. And when we were travelling, of course, this was before British Railways closed down this branch of the railroad. Father happened to be there visiting Phil and Harold. Joe, Nora. This is where Joe learned to swim. This is the Dartmouth Swim Club out there at Sugary Cove. It's quite dramatic in its way, but it must have been cold. Whoa! But anyway, she learned that. And this is the steps that lead down to the swim club. I presume it's still in operation. There's my father looking at the, that's the back alleyway, as it were, of Derriton, and my father's in the garden there, looking at the beautiful flowers, Harold's caused to grow there. Here's Phil looking out of the, I guess the back door. That would be the door through that conservatory that we showed earlier. Off on a trip. You can see where if you're quick. Milestone. Phil, looking over the sea. Now this is at Slapton Sands, and with Slapton Lee behind it. Now this is the seaside, of course, and the people there with their windbreakers. This is always a good breeze, fairly chilly. There's even a character there being towed on water skis. It's quite a nice little village there. You can get tea and a nice pub that serves pub kind of meals, you know, chips with everything. It's just great. We went there with Renee Wood, Renee Sweetland, Aunt Renee. I guess the last time that we ever went out with her, anyway. This is looking towards Slapton Lee. That's fresh water that's sort of entrapped behind the bank that runs for some 4 miles with the road across over it. Slapton Lee. I think that this is back in Dartmouth, although I could be wrong, but here's a boat from Dartmouth Harbour. Or there may have been a couple of shots of Kingsbridge, but it's part of the trip. Anyway, we're back in Dartmouth Harbour now. The Queen's Hotel, where all those years ago we had the reception. Well, at that time it wasn't that many years ago. And Joe's taken us on a tour of the public houses, off licenses. That's the chemist shop where Roy Courtney started his training as an apprentice chemist. One of my favorites, Pook's, the men's outfitter. I used to buy all my hats there, of course. That's in one of the oldest Elizabethan buildings in the town. You can see it, and it's quite genuine. Beautiful cherubs. That's Hornhill Steps. Aunt Kath lived at the very top of those steps on the left, and that's where I stayed the first time before I ever met Joe, and that's how I met Joe, as a matter of fact, staying up the top of those stairs. Now that's Uncle Jack Courtney, and we're going to see a little more of him. And Aunt Edna, Phyllis, and her brother, Jack Courtney. And here, I believe it's him here conducting the band at Brixham. The old town band. Plenty of members. Fishing fleet at Brixham. I'm sure that David won't mind my remarking that it was at Brixham who objected to him asking them to turn down their radio, their boom box. So, here's a nice peaceful looking place, but you want to be careful. I didn't even know there was a beach at Brixham. I never asked them about that. This is how the traffic gets. You can usually get in one direction and hopefully leaving, I guess, with the traffic like this. But it just kind of pile up in the summer. And that's Rodney. Joe's off for a trip with Rodney somewhere, and I expect this is Kingsbridge too, because Rodney lived in the Kingsbridge area for quite a while. He still is fairly close to it. We're going to meet, Joe tells me that he had, I never went on this particular trip, but she tells me that he had a nice, part of a nice farmhouse out away from the town. And anyway, this is, I think, Rodney's ex-wife. I'm going to say Julie, I'm not 100% sure.